You know, we all know someone who needs their space, right? Someone who builds up walls to feel safe. But what happens when that need for safety turns into a prison? Today, we're diving into the Hermit Mother, a fascinating psychological archetype whose desperate search for security can end up creating a cage of fear, not just for herself, but for the very people she loves the most. Wow, this quote, it's from a case study of a woman named Cynthia, and it just hits you, right? It perfectly captures the core desire of the hermit. This isn't just about wanting a little privacy. No, this is about building a fortress, a full-on moat-enclosed castle to protect herself from a world that she sees as relentlessly hostile. So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll introduce who the hermit is. Then, we'll get into the fear that drives her. From there, we'll explore her inner world, lay out her key characteristics, and finally, look at the powerful impact she has on the next generation. All right, so let's get right into it. Who is the Hermit Mother? Let's start painting a really clear picture of this personality. And this is what's so fascinating, right? It's this huge contrast. On the outside, the hermit can seem self-sufficient, maybe even confident. But inside? Well, her own journals tell a different story. They reveal that this hard shell is just woven together with fear, terror, and hostility. You know, a really good way to get a handle on the hermit is to put her side by side with another archetype, the waif. A waif's vulnerability is right there on the surface. She might be inappropriately self-disclosing, very talkative. The hermit? Total opposite. She is closed, she is private, and she puts up this hard external shell that is just incredibly difficult to get through. So, what's the engine driving all of this? What's behind that hard, protective shell? Well, it all boils down to one word: fear. It is, without a doubt, the hermit's dominant emotional state. And this is where things get really, really tricky. The hermit is caught in this central paradox. She lives in absolute terror of two opposite things happening at the same time: being controlled by others and being abandoned by them. It's an impossible trap, where getting close feels threatening, but so does being left alone. The poet Sylvia Plath, whose life and journals give us such a stark look into this archetype, she just nailed this inner experience. For the hermit, fear isn't just some emotion you try to manage. It becomes the central organizing principle of your entire life. It's what keeps you alive, but without it, you just feel numb and dead. So what's the result of living with this all-consuming fear? A life of profound, self-imposed isolation. It stops her from being seen, from getting help. She'll avoid groups, maybe even cut herself out of pictures. She keeps herself locked in and locked up. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. How is this fear actually experienced on the inside? For the hermit, this isn't some vague, free-floating anxiety. It's a very specific and constant feeling of being under attack. Psychologists have a term for this: acute persecutory anxiety. But what that really means is that the hermit spends her life trying to ward off this nameless internal predator. She might become convinced that whole groups of people are dangerous, especially anyone who doesn't share her exact interests or values. And you can see how this mindset plays out. She might expect betrayal around every single corner, search for hidden negative meanings in a simple greeting card, or form these really intense us-against-the-world alliances with family members. This constant suspicion can even make her believe she's extraordinarily perceptive or even psychic. And once again, Sylvia Plath's journal just gives us this raw window into the turmoil. This question right here reveals that deep conflict. A part of her wants connection, but it's at war with this intense, instinctual repulsion from other people. And it's a battle she might not even try to fight, because the danger just feels way too real. Right, so how does this internal world of fear and persecution actually look on the outside? Let's break down the key observable characteristics of the Hermit Mother. What you start to see is this clear pattern of control and suspicion. We see possessiveness, extreme jealousy, constant overthinking. These are all behaviors designed to try and manage a world that feels deeply, deeply unsafe. So let's dig into a few of these with some concrete examples. Okay, let's talk about possessiveness. And we're not just talking about objects here. This is about boundaries. Plath's reaction is just so telling. To her, a friend making a small mark in her book wasn't an innocent act. It was a profound violation, a violation she described with the brutal term raped intellectually. That's how deep the breach felt. And her jealousy, wow, it could be just as explosive. When her husband was late coming back from a lunch with a female producer, her paranoia just ignited. In what was described as a vicious display of unbridled rage, she became hysterical and literally destroyed his manuscripts, including all his work on Shakespeare. It was a huge turning point in their marriage. And then there's rumination. You know that feeling where you can't stop replaying something in your head? For the hermit, it's on a whole other level. Cynthia's kids even had a name for it: the panic of the day. A harmless comment from a coworker, something most of us would forget in 5 minutes, could trigger a week-long spiral of anxiety and suspicion for her. She'd just endlessly replay it, searching for its toxic, hidden meaning. Okay, so we've seen the hermit's inner world, we've seen her behaviors, but what about the ripple effect? What happens to a child who is raised inside that fortress? The core message the Hermit Mother teaches is devastatingly simple. Life isn't just dangerous, it's overwhelmingly dangerous. She projects her own fears onto her children until they absorb them, until her reality becomes their reality. And this worldview gets passed down through this constant stream of warnings. It starts with, "You're going to get hurt." Then it escalates to, "Keep your doors locked, don't tell anybody." Pretty soon it's, "They're out to get us." And finally, the ultimate rule of the fortress: don't let them in. The child learns to be afraid, often without ever really knowing what they're supposed to be afraid of. And the result is just deeply damaging. A child's self-confidence gets eroded, they can be held back from normal experiences, like getting a driver's license, just because the mother's anxiety is too intense. And crucially, they can lose the ability to tell the difference between a genuine threat and an erotic, imagined one. And this single sentence from the source material, it just sums up the whole tragic irony, doesn't it? The very same invisible web that the mother spins to protect herself from intruders ends up paralyzing her own children in its sticky strands of fear. And that's really what we're left with, isn't it? The hermit's journey starts with this desperate, understandable search for safety, but it so often ends in a place of profound suffering for everyone involved. It forces us to ask, at what point does a shield become a cage?